Uhuru, and welcome to the event, How Wall Street Funds Police Terror Against the Black Community. My name is Ali Ayello, and I'm a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and I will be your MC for this evening. This event is being hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and USM is a membership-based organization of white people who was created by and works under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party, with the mission to go into the white community, the colonizer nation, and raise reparations to African people. I want to start off by saluting Chairman Omali Yeshitela for creating this organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, as a place for white people to stand in solidarity with the fight for African people to be free. Chairman Omali Yeshitela is a brilliant African revolutionary leader. He's the founder of the Uhuru movement and the worldwide African revolution. And it was Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party who made reparations a household word. I also want to salute Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, the leader of the independent anti-colonial African economy and the architect of the Black Power Blueprint. I also want to let everyone know how honored we are to have some incredible special guests on the program tonight. And I want to salute and give appreciation to our keynote speaker, Akile Anai, the Director of Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party and the first reparations candidate in this country. We also have Penny Hess, Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and I want to salute Chairwoman Penny's stance of solidarity for over 40 years to win white people to the stand of reparations. And lastly, we will also hear from Jesse Neville, Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And I want to salute Chair Jesse for his dynamic leadership over this organization in the Make Wall Street Pay Reparations campaign, which you will be hearing more about this evening. After hearing from our speakers this evening, I want to let you all know that we will have time for Q&A. So throughout the program, we encourage people to put their questions in the question and answer section on Zoom, or you can email info@uhurusolidarity.org and we will answer them during the Q&A section. And tonight we are calling on you to join organization under the leadership of the African working class. We want you to become a member of this movement of white solidarity with Black power. And you'll be able to hear more about that throughout the program. But we want you to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And we also have a fundraising goal of raising $1,000 today for the Black Power Blueprint, which we will be talking more about later in the program. But yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that. And now, without further ado, I want to bring up our first speaker, our national chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville. Jesse ran for mayor of St. Petersburg in 2017 under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party on a platform of unity through reparations. He is a dynamic leader of USM and has been chairing our main campaign to make Wall Street, which you will be hearing more about. So without further ado, I would like to bring up our chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville.
Uhuru, everyone. Uhuru, thank you, Comrade Ali. And I want to join in welcoming everybody to this important webinar tonight. And I really want to appreciate that introduction and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement Southern region for hosting this event tonight. And I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint here. Here we go. So hopefully you can see that. I'm assuming you can see that. Okay. So I just want to salute the theme of this event tonight and discussing not only how Wall Street funds the police terror against the African community, but how we can be involved in making Wall Street pay reparations for police terror against African people. And I want to start by joining Comrade Ali Ayello in saluting the leader without whose analysis, vision, and struggle and organization and strategy for over 50 years, this event would not be happening. None of this would be happening. I salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela. He is our leadership in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and he has fought for over 50 years to rebuild the African Revolution worldwide. So all of the understandings that you hear in the presentations tonight are the understandings of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the political theory of African internationalism that we embrace, that we internalize as our worldview. I also want to salute Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, who was mentioned, who is an incredible and highly influential and beloved leader within the African People's Socialist Party worldwide, whose impact is felt from South St. Pete to South Africa or occupied Azania, and who leads the economic work of the African People's Socialist Party, including functioning as the visionary architect of the Black Power Blueprint program that we are involved in raising resources for tonight as reparations. And one of our keynote speakers, Director of Agitation and Propaganda, Akile Anai, who is also, as was mentioned, represents the first ever candidate to run for public office on a platform of reparations to African people. Now you're hearing city governments in Evanston, Illinois, in Asheville, North Carolina, and other places adopting reparations bills and talking about legislating and making reparations happen on the local level. That discussion would not be happening if it weren't for the Uhuru movement, and in particular, if it weren't for Akile Anai, who also leads a massive department of agitation and propaganda engaging in the war of ideas for the African People's Socialist Party. So it's a great honor to have Director Akile with us tonight, and I'm going to try to be quick with this presentation because I'm as excited as everybody else to hear Director Akile's presentation, as well as my direct leadership in the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who has been fighting under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party since the founding, since literally the first day that the African People's Solidarity Committee was formed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. Chairwoman Penny Hess was there, and she is here now and has continued for over 40 years, for over, I think it's 45 years now, to represent the highest stand of white solidarity with Black power. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing Chairwoman Penny's presentation tonight, and just salute the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And as was mentioned, my name is Jesse Neville, and I am the national chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which, as Ali stated, is the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee that the chairman and the party formed in 1976 as a cadre organization of white people in solidarity with the African Revolution, who are willing to go all the way, do whatever it takes to forward the revolutionary struggle of African and oppressed peoples everywhere and build reparations to African people. And I am also a proud member of APSC. And APSC built the mass organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, to extend the struggle, the strategy of the African People's Socialist Party into the masses of white society, into the white community, to win white people everywhere to stand in solidarity with African liberation. So we have three principles of unity. One, we're an organization of the African People's Socialist Party, and that's more than just a principle of unity. That's a self-evident reality. The party created us. We didn't decide to be under the leadership of the party. The party created this organization. They created this stance for white people to take. They defined the genuine stance of solidarity and called on us to take that stand. Two, we organize white people. We organize in the white community, our fellow white people, to stand for reparations to African people. And three, we believe African people have the right to lead their own struggle for self-determination. The movement is for socialism, for revolution, for social transformation, is not going to be led by white people. There's enough historical evidence for the last 600 years to explain why that would be the case. And we can be part of changing the world, but we have to be under the leadership of the African working class, the revolutionary organization of the African working class, and that is the African People's Socialist Party. So I want to say to you, if you are white and you are watching this, you're here because you want to be a part of changing the world. You want to see an end to the horrendous reality where African mothers are forced to bury their children who are murdered at the hands of the police, when nothing like that happens to the white community, then you've come to the right place, because this is where we can make a difference. This is where we can be part of changing the world by joining a strategy, by getting organized under the leadership of African people themselves. So we want you to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, uhurusolidarity.org/join. Become a member. That is the goal of this event, to win you watching this right now to become a member, to become organized under the leadership of of the African People's Socialist Party. And we want to shout you out. We want to salute you and shout you out by name at the end of the event tonight. So at any time during the event tonight, go ahead, go to uhurusolidarity.org/join and become a member. So I want to talk to you about the work that we are doing right now under the leadership of the party to embark on a struggle to build a massive international movement to make Wall Street pay reparations. We are uniting with the demand and the struggle initiated by the African People's Socialist Party for Wall Street to pay reparations for its historic and present day role in the colonial murder, enslavement, and exploitation of African people and their resources. Wall Street, the banks, the corporations, the CEOs, the moneyed sector of parasitic capitalism must pay reparations to African people, specifically to the Black Power Blueprint, the visionary self-determination program of the African working class, regaining political and economic power over their lives, resources, and communities. This campaign was initiated by the African People's Socialist Party at a time of tremendous crisis and upheaval for US imperialism. And as the chairman has said, this is an invitation for white people to join a struggle, a fight that African people have been waging for generations, for centuries. As the chairman said in 2001, when he spoke at Occupy Wall Street in Oakland, the struggle against Wall Street was begun by African people when enslaved Africans revolted in New York, rose up to try to break the chains of slavery in New York. That's when the struggle against Wall Street was initiated. African people have always resisted. And as the chairman said to Occupy Wall Street white protesters then, welcome to the club. We are joining in a struggle that African people have been fighting forever. And the reparations struggle is a total assault on the foundation of Wall Street, capitalism, and this whole social system built on slavery and colonialism. Reparations takes many forms, as the chairman says, and right now, reparations is already being fought for on the ground in many different ways by the African working class. As the chairman pointed out, even what they call looting, quote unquote, in Minneapolis and elsewhere is just forced reparations. That is why so many banks and corporations have come forward to say, oh, now I support Black lives. I stand with the Black community. I will give a little chump change to some charity. Believe me, I'm one of the good white billionaires, and so on and so forth. These people didn't just discover a conscience. They saw the flames rising from their bank branches in Minneapolis and in other places. They saw the writing on the wall. They saw that resistance is the future. So it's time for us white people to do our part in waging this struggle for reparations from Wall Street. And this webinar tonight is part of a series of webinars that we are hosting to expose that Wall Street, the financial center of US imperialism and capitalism, simultaneously fuels the colonial oppression of African people and feeds off of it. So whether it is the murder of African people by the police, whether it is the mass incarceration of African people, whether it is the displacement of millions of African people from their homes by gentrification, subprime mortgage scam, predatory lending, or whether it is these bankers' involvement in laundering money for CIA-controlled drug trafficking operations where African people get put in prison for supposedly participating in an illegal drug economy imposed on their resource-starved communities, but these bankers never see a day in prison for laundering the money for these drug traffickers. That in any of these situations, if you follow the money, follow it all the way to the top, you will end up in the corporate boardrooms and mansions and cigar lounges of the Wall Street ruling elite. So that is why we are saying make Wall Street pay reparations to African people. So let's look at the issue of how Wall Street funds the police murder of African people in this country. And I want to take you through some of these banks, and I'm going to end on the bank that we are focusing on right now, which is Bank of America. So let's start with JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase is the largest bank in the United States. And in 2011, JP Morgan Chase donated $4.6 million to the New York Police Foundation, boasting on its website that this was the largest in that group's history, and hoping that the money would allow the New York Police Department to strengthen their security. The Police Foundation is the private fundraising arm of the NYPD. So this is basically off the books. You know, this is not even part of any city budget. It allows donors to make tax-exempt gifts to the department, and in turn, the foundation funds a wide range of specialized NYPD units, international counterinsurgent terror, and high-tech weapons. So we say, make JP Morgan Chase pay reparations, and shout out to Alex Schaefer, who is the artist who made some of these beautiful paintings that you're going to be seeing in this presentation tonight. So it turns out JP Morgan is not the only financial institution that has been generous to the New York Police Foundation. In 2009 and 2010, Goldman Sachs, Barclays Capital, Jeffries & Co., Carl Ison and his investment firm, they all gave money. The Renco Group, all of these donors gave over $100,000 each to the New York Police Foundation. And then our very own Bank of America, the target of our campaign, gave over $75,000 in 2009. Some of the money from the New York Police Foundation, it turns out, was being used to buy booze and cigars for the New York Police Department Commissioner, Ray Kelly. So they buy weapons, they buy all kinds of things to terrorize African people, and they also are, lounging away on the profits stolen from the lives of African people. So we say, make the NYPD Police Foundation pay reparations to African people. Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo is a partner and donor to the Seattle Police Foundation. They sit on the Atlanta Police Foundation's board, and they sponsored their Blue Jean Ball, and they have also donated to other police departments throughout the years. Now, this is the tip of the iceberg about Wells Fargo, and we're going to have other webinars in the future about their connections to drug trafficking, their connections to the subprime mortgage scandal, and their connections to the prison industry. And we're going to be doing a series touching on each of those aspects of Wall Street. So we say, make Wells Fargo pay reparations to African people. Target. Okay, I'm sure people remember when the targets were, they said looting, but we say we're being reparated by the resistance in Minneapolis. Well, Target is not innocent. Target has made major contributions to police foundations across the country. They donated to the New York City, Atlanta, and Seattle police foundations. They gave $200,000 to LAPD to purchase sophisticated surveillance equipment, and so on and so forth. So make Target pay reparations to African people. Goldman Sachs donated $250,000 to the Los Angeles Police Foundation in 2018, $100,000 to the New York Police Department, another $15,000 in 2018. Make Goldman Sachs pay reparations. And last but not least, Bank of America, who we are targeting. This list could go on and on. $200,000 to the NYPD, $51,250 to the Atlanta Police, $25,000 to the Boston Police, $10,000 to the LAPD, the Yarmouth, Massachusetts, Sarasota, Abilene, Texas, Duluth, Minnesota, Bellevue, Washington, Sacramento, Glendale. All of those police foundations got money from the Bank of America, and they have representatives sitting on the Chicago and New York Police Foundation boards. They also are one of the main banks that makes a lot of money anytime an African person gets killed or brutalized by the police, because they make money off of what is called police brutality bonds. Bank of America profits anytime a city has to pay out a settlement in a police brutality case, because the city issues municipal bonds to pay for the settlement. In order to get those bonds issued, they have to have a bank underwrite those bonds. The banks collect interest and processing fees, and end up making money off of the settlement cases when police kill or terrorize the African community, and they call it police brutality bonds. So make Bank of America pay reparations to African people. And what I want to say in closing is that these are some of the ways that these banks profit off of the oppression of African people. And we're going to be hearing more later tonight about how this is just the latest way, because these banks wouldn't even exist if not for the oppression of African people. All of these banks, including Bank of America, got their startup in the sale and enslavement of African human beings, accepting enslaved African people as collateral on loans and actually owning enslaved African human beings. Bank of America, JP Morgan, all of them are guilty of that. And their entire legacy has been drenched in the blood and stolen lives and resources and labor of African people. So this is why these banks have to pay reparations to the Black Power blueprint. And this is what this campaign is about. So we have a job to do. And I want to close by saying that while it is true that 1% of the world's population hoards the majority of the world's wealth, it is also not true that we in the general white population are the 99%, as was one of the favorite chants of the Occupy Wall Street movement. We are not the 99%. 1% of the world's population controls most of the resources, but another 17 or 18% controls almost all of the rest of it. And then the rest of the population of the planet Earth is left with nothing. And that is colonialism. That is the relationship of the white population, not only to the 1%, but to the real 99%, which is the colonized and oppressed peoples of the world. So that's why this is different from anything that's come before it. This is not about equating ourselves as white people to Africans and other oppressed peoples and saying that we're all in the same boat, or that now that we are feeling a pinch of the economic crisis that African people have been living with for centuries, that now we are all one big multiracial working class family fighting against the 1%ers. That's not how it works. That might be how Bernie Sanders sees it, and that might have been how the Occupy movement saw it, but that is not how we see it. That is not how it works in the real world. And before there were well-funded police departments to protect and defend the capitalist system, there was just us regular white people, civilian volunteers who, as Chairwoman Penny Hess documented so well in the book, Overturning the Culture of Violence, we functioned as the shock troops for the 1% historically. We fought their wars, we lynched African people. We didn't fight the 1%, we fought to keep African workers out of the labor unions. And anytime we did struggle with the 1%, as Chairman Amali Shatella has said, what has passed for class struggle within the white world historically has not been a struggle against capitalism, it has been a struggle within capitalism for white workers or the general white population to try to gain more access to the stolen loot and resources of African and colonized people by competing with the white ruling class for more access to that stolen loot. So the real underlying message of white-led class struggle has been, let us have some more of that stolen loot, please. That has been the real underlying demand, sometimes openly. And this is why the chairman says that genuine class struggle for white people means a class struggle in solidarity and unity with the anti-colonial struggle of the African working class under their leadership as part of their strategy for African liberation, which is our future, which is our liberation, which is our revolution as well. So now we will truly make class war against the 1% by raising the revolutionary demand for reparations to African people. No more stolen resources in their hands to fight wars in our name and for our presumed short-term interest. We want nothing to do with that. We say not in our name. We refuse to see our future tied to this parasitic capitalist system. Our future is in solidarity with African working class people, the real 99%, the real workers of the world. So Make Wall Street Pay Reparations is a socialist movement. It's an anti-capitalist movement to the core, because capitalism and a free African people cannot coexist. One requires the subjugation, the destruction of the other. And as Chairman Amali Shatella once famously wrote, the road to socialism is painted black. So white people, The way that we can get on that road to socialism is by joining the campaign to make Wall Street pay reparations to African people, by joining this organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and by getting organized, by going beyond protests and getting organized under the leadership of the African working class. So I want to just say, join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, go to uhurusolidarity.org/join, become a member of white solidarity with Black power, and make Wall Street pay reparations. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Jesse, for that incredible presentation. I just want to appreciate our chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville. And if you unite with that presentation and what that campaign is putting forward, then go ahead, go to uhurusolidarity.org/join and sign up to become a member of this movement today. And you can also go to our website to contribute to our goal tonight and to pay reparations. But I really just want to appreciate that presentation from our chair of USM. And now I want to introduce you. I want to bring up Director Akile Anai. Director Akile is a leader in the Uhuru movement and sits on the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party. She is the Director of Agitation and Propaganda and is the editor-in-chief of the Burning Spear newspaper, which is the oldest Black revolutionary newspaper in print today. And most recently, Director Akile ran for District 7 City Council right here in St. Petersburg, Florida, with the campaign slogan to make the South Side Black again, and was the only candidate with a truly progressive platform and was the first reparations candidate in this country. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Director Akile. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Comrade Ali, well, I appreciate that introduction. And I really want to salute this event. I want to really appreciate the presentation that Comrade Chair Jesse Neville just made. And I really think that this is a very, very critical discussion. And it's a part of it's part of waging the war of ideas, which is, the responsibility I have as the Director of Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party. And raising these really critical ideological questions to deepen our understanding about, everything that's going on in the world. And before I begin, I do want to start by appreciating and saluting my leadership, Chairman Amalia Shatella, because these discussions are happening and being deepened based on the work that he's done for over the last 50 years. And, most of the discussions that are happening now, even around these different questions that are happening among the bourgeois mainstream, the media, the politicians, the sellouts, everything, that type of discussion is happening, due in part to the work that the chairman has done to the development of African internationalism. And most times you're hearing a very chewed up and spit out version of African internationalism. And so, it's the leadership of the chairman that has, he's been summing up the tipping point of the crisis of imperialism, for decades now, and formed the party, the African People's Socialist Party, anticipating this moment in history. And that's why we are prepared for the to what end. And we not only posed the question, but we answered it. Chairman Amalia Shatella answered that question, and the party is here as a consequence of answering the to what end of the types of struggles and the development of struggle that we're seeing today. So I first just wanted to appreciate and salute my leadership for that, and that we're having an African internationalist discussion, and that's due to his leadership. So I wanted to say that, and I wanted to also appreciate the discussion because it raises, the critical fundamental question, which is, the main contradiction of colonial capitalism. And that is the core, that is every issue, every problem we see, every time you turn on the news today and there's just something else, the ruling class is in this, very desperate state, and, it acts more vicious every single day in the form of the police, in the form of all the different acts that they commit, all the crimes that they commit on a daily basis, is a contradiction of colonial capitalism. That's it. That's the core. And being able to understand that gives us the ability to say that protesting, demanding the firing of a few cops, and the type of action we see right now on its own isn't enough. That on its own, knowing that colonial capitalism is the core of the contradiction, that protesting and with no trajectory isn't enough for our struggle. And colonial capitalism came into existence. It was birthed through the enslavement of African people, birthed through the genocide and the theft of this land that we are on today, called, the United States of America, the US, stolen land. It was a part of a process of looting and raping entire countries and, keeping people under colonial domination. And it maintains itself through extraordinary acts of violence every single day. And that's what the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis represented. It represented colonial capitalism protecting its interests through this arm of the state called the police. And, that's colonial capitalism. And that relationship has to remain in order for this system to remain intact, in order for this parasitic social system to remain intact. And that's what the chairman has defined for us, that this system is parasitic and that is colonial capitalism. And that's the birth of it. The birth of it came through, the enslavement, the attack on Africa and African people. And that helps us to really understand, well, what will end this? What will end, the conditions that were just spoken about in brief in the presentation that Jesse just gave, which, is really the tip of the iceberg in terms of the atrocities that are committed against the people of the world every single day by this system. So, what we know about the system is that, it has established these economic and these political structures in order to make sure that the system can stay in place. And that is the banks. That's the police. That's part of the structures that have been established and put in place in order to maintain this relationship that this system has with African, colonized, and oppressed peoples of the world. Those are just examples of the structures and the fact that these structures can rob. They wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the theft of the stolen labor and resources of African people today. They wouldn't exist. There would be no Bank of America. There would be no Chase. There would be no there would be none of these entities today without that attack on Africa and African people. And, for these same banks to then turn resources over to the police that are protecting the bank's interests by keeping our stolen resources, everything that has been taken and robbed from African people, that's the structure that has been put in place to protect the interests of colonial capitalism. So that is really, really important for us to understand, because that helps us to take it beyond protests based on that reality. And I want to say, though, that it should be celebrated, the protests that are happening, the struggle that's happening throughout the world, it should be celebrated. It's righteous and it's indicative of an unrecoverable imperialism. That's what we can say about it. It's all of this movement is, based on, African and colonized people are taking back their land, taking back their resources, and refusing to live under colonial domination any longer. And it's a statement of the people fed up with this social system, that the system has no answers. And this, and this is something that has been brewing for, since the beginning of this social system. It's not something that just occurred. I mean, revolutions and struggles like that have been happening for as long as the system came into being. So it's not something that's new in history in terms of people struggling against the system, but it has reached such a heightened point. As the chairman said, the tipping point, it has reached such a height that it can never go back. It can never go back to normal. People were saying, hoping that when the pandemic ended, whatever that will be, that, they would hope that it would go back to normal. There is absolutely no normalcy for imperialism anymore. It cannot rule in the same old way. The US is on its ass, and it's totally bare, and the contradiction is totally bare and exposed. The pandemic was part of the thing that exposed the incapability of this social system, to meet the needs of the people. I mean, it really is just, the system in 2020 has really taken some hits, and I mean, of course, that is due to the struggles that are being made by the peoples of the world today. So, but, in order for us to truly see it into the conditions that have been laid out up to now, ultimately, and even now, the protests and demonstrations that we lead, the fundraisers that we conduct, the various actions and work that we do, it has to be tied to a revolutionary trajectory. It has to be tied to, making a revolution. That's what it has to be tied to doing. And when, it's not a demonstration that we lead, our responsibility is to go out there among the masses who are demonstrating, who are fed up, to go out there and organize them, to bring them onto the revolutionary trajectory. That's our responsibility, but it's to take all of these different actions and be on every single front that it's possible in order to raise the consciousness of the struggle that's happening and to bring them towards the struggle, the anti-colonial struggle, which is the correct and just struggle. And that's what the African People's Socialist Party was founded to do. It was founded to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s, which served as leadership and inspiration for colonized and oppressed people everywhere that were fighting for freedom. And our revolution at that time obviously was not successful, and it was defeated by the U.S. government. I mean, most of us should know that by now, that the U.S. government waged a very successful counterinsurgency against the Black Revolution, against the anti-colonial movement of the 60s. It was what Chairman characterizes as a war without terms, that was totally made on the Black liberation movement here in this country and around the world. And, but despite the fact that it was defeated, our struggle then was clear. It was clear that it was a struggle for power, and it was anti-colonial in its nature, the struggle that we were making in the 60s. We were fighting to negate the power of the colonizer in our lives by fighting for our own power, fighting for Black power. That's what the struggle was. And the party was founded to carry that out, to finish the job, to achieve Black power over African lives. That's what the party has set out to do. And that's what everything we have formed and every front we fight on, that's the primary demand, is for power into the hands of African people. And one way you can tell the success of the counterinsurgency today is the fact that our struggle over 50 years later is broadly characterized as one for white people to like us. And I'm talking about the struggle for, against racism, because that's what that is. And that's how, the counterinsurgency was successful. Because for our struggle to be against racism, is the whole idea that white people they treat us bad, and if only they saw us as human, and if we could just relate to you guys in some way, shape, or form. And I really appreciate even the statement that Jesse was making towards the end of his presentation about the whole struggle of a white worker, and that the white worker has with its ruling class, and that it is a struggle within capitalism for the benefits of capitalism, and that we know of socialists who have condemned, who have been opposed to reparations. And that is that's like, again, a part of the whole counterinsurgency against our movement, and the whole question of prioritizing, ending racism and making white people like us and all these kind of things puts white people directly in the center of the whole thing. And that's the struggle of the white worker, puts the white worker in the center of the whole thing, and does not acknowledge the power relationship, the dynamic that the colonizer has over the colonized, does not recognize that there was a relationship of somebody who was colonized and somebody who's a colonizer, and somebody has power over our lives. That the struggle against racism does not recognize that, and it makes it the subjective thing where, Black people don't have any material interests. We just, don't want to be killed anymore because we want white people to change their feelings about us. And that is the counterinsurgency. That is the counterinsurgency. And it's really important for us to move away from that, because that's not what it's about. It is about power. The colonized, it's the responsibility of the colonized to end colonialism, to defeat colonialism. That's our responsibility. And it's also the colonizer's responsibility, who no longer wants to side with your ruling class. It is your responsibility to join this struggle under the leadership of the African working class, an anti-colonial struggle. It is your responsibility in that way. And, right now, the ruling class and its neo-colonial puppets, for example, the Obamas and people like that, that type of ilk, they're placing their futures in the hopes that these demonstrations don't lead to any type of real conclusions that will fundamentally change the relationship that this system has with African and other colonized peoples around the world. That's what they're placing their future on, that hope. Well, what we're discussing today, the African People's Socialist Party is here to shatter those hopes. It's to shatter the hopes of the white ruling class, of the imperialist rulers that, that what the struggles that are happening today are going to go beyond protests. Because we have something to do with it, because the Black Revolution is alive in the form of the African People's Socialist Party, in the form of Chairman Malia Chattel and African internationalism, in the form of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is this front of Black power in white face. That's why they can no longer place their hopes and bets that, this struggle won't go beyond where it is now. And they're doing everything that they can to make sure that doesn't happen. The corporate scrambles and, the corporations trying to, post up Black Lives Matter, the city painting murals on the streets and, making these, really frilly attempts at what they say is defunding the police and, the banks coming out in solidarity and willing to do loans, and Amazon waving the RBG flag. All of that is, in hopes that that could be enough. That could be the pacification. If we could just leave it right here, we'd be good to go. But of course, we won't leave it right here. We exist. That is our responsibility, is to make sure that it does not just rest there, because we have to take it. Because clearly that doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve anything. The reality of African people still exists today. Africans are still being, as we have this discussion, being pushed into a prison right now. An African is being gunned down somewhere in this country by the police. African people in Africa do not have control over our own resources, over our own labor. We live in the worst kinds of conditions on our own land, surrounded by our own resources that we have to go and work day in and day out to extract for the colonizer, for the ruling class to have access to have that wealth, to continue to maintain, the wealth, the economic system that they have been up to now. So obviously that will not work. We have to defeat the social system, and that has to happen. And there can be no ands, if, or buts about it. If the system came into being on the backs of African people, then it must be destroyed. It must be destroyed by African people. And that it has to be under the leadership that of African people, of the African working class, that this struggle has to be made. And people have to unite with that. White people have to unite with that. White people who say they hate what's happening in the world and they really, they don't see a future in this, has to unite with working under the leadership of the African working class. Otherwise, it becomes a struggle for your own selfish interests to make it happen within this system and to not jump off the colonial pedestal. And we're taking the pedestal right from under you. So you got to jump off anyway, right? So, it's extremely important to really understand and recognize the leadership of the African working class, and that the African People's Socialist Party is the advanced attachment of the African working class. It's just out clear as day. We say this is who leads this party, this organization, which distinguishes us from any, organization or formation on the planet, that says that they're for freedom and all that type of stuff. So, it's an advanced revolutionary political party, and it has a responsibility to lead the African nation toward our liberation, our inevitable victory, which will, it really will unleash and free all of humanity that is locked down under this parasitic social system we know as colonial capitalism today. That happens as a consequence of the African Revolution. Historically, the world has looked towards African people as the leadership over this struggle, and they continue to do so today. So this is, it's a new day, it's our time. And I just want to say, before I close, that this campaign, Make Wall Street Pay Reparations, the demand that has been waged and raised by the party and by our mass organizations like the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement for Black community control of the police, it raises up the colonial question. And they're not just like demands like, provide some more grants from the city and, defund the police and all those kinds of things. These campaigns raise the colonial question, which is super important. It takes us beyond protest. It delivers real death blows to this system. Reparations and the whole struggle that's happening in the white community that is Black power and white face, that we have African internationalists in the white community making this struggle happen, is a serious death blow to imperialism. And those are some of the distinguishing factors about our campaigns and our demands. And it's because it's rooted in the anti-colonial struggle. That's what it's about. And the whole question of reparations, I mean, really, really puts it out that this system, all of the wealth, the resources that it has, it came as a consequence of theft. It came as a consequence of rape, genocide. That's what it is. And that's why reparations are owed. And the system can't stand to pay reparations. It can't even stand to entertain the idea, because that means the system, to pay what it owes would mean to shoot itself in the head, essentially. So, and also what these campaigns and these demands do, that these others don't, is that it raises the ideological development of the masses. And that's a part of our responsibility of transforming the struggle that's happening now and bringing it onto a revolutionary trajectory, making it mean something. Because the protests and demonstrations, they will let you protest. They will come out there and they will protect you. They will put barriers around you and make sure that white nationalist vigilantes won't hit you with their cars. They will help you protest. They will help you. They will organize it. They will organize a protest for you, because it's not rooted in the anti-colonial character. So that, this is why it's really important to go beyond that. And the moment you go beyond and you're struggling against colonialism, you'll see that they become less friendly to the idea of you just going out to do a protest. So I just wanted to say those things. And these campaigns really allows for people to see and demand more than we ever thought was possible, because we've been so conditioned to believe that the little concessions that the system will make in order to pacify the people is all that we can get. We can take the whole thing, and the state of the system should let us know that. The crisis that it's in, and the fact that they can't put band-aids over anything, it is out there, should be an inspiration to us all to know that we can take it all, and we can do it with the leadership of the African working class, with the African People's Socialist Party. So I just want to, thank the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, really appreciate this discussion. And, we are winning, comrades. I mean, they're all you can say, we turn on the news. That's what I do. We are winning. So Uhuru.
Uhuru, Director QA. Salute that profound presentation. And yes, we are winning. That was incredibly, incredibly powerful, and just really appreciate that. And what you said, the African working class is going to take it. So we might as well jump off the pedestal now and join organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And I just really, really, again, want to appreciate that presentation. Thank you. And I want to remind people that if you would like to become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, you can do that at uhurusolidarity.org. Click the Become a Member button. And if you would like to pay reparations today and make a donation, you can also do that too by clicking the Pay Reparations button. So go ahead, go to uhurusolidarity.org right now and make that happen. And I also want to give a big shout out to our comrades in Somerville, Massachusetts, who are holding a viewing party right there. And just really want to salute those comrades for tuning in and watching. So now it's an honor to introduce the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess. Penny Hess has been a member of APSC since its founding in 1976, working under the leadership of Chairman Omale Shatella to carry out the brilliant scientific strategy of organizing members of the colonizer nation to break our allegiance with imperialism and unite with principled material solidarity with the African Revolution. I just appreciate Chairwoman Penny's stance for over 40 years, and she also wrote an incredible book called Overturning the Culture of Violence, which you can order at burningspearmarketplace.com. So now it is an honor to bring up Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Uhuru, and thank you so much, Ali. And I really appreciate everybody who's coming out tonight to listen to this incredible discussion. I salute again Director Akile Anai, who is part of my leadership. She is a member of the Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, which we have the honor to be under the leadership of. I want to salute Chair Jesse Neville for that brilliant presentation. And I want to, of course, salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is our leadership, who is the leader of the African Revolution, who has been a veteran of the African Revolution since the 1960s, who has been out there with one goal: to win the total liberation of Africa and African people everywhere. That's what he's fought for the last 50 years. He's fighting for it now. You can watch him every Sunday morning on hashtag Omali Taught Me. It's incredible political education. And you can watch him every Wednesday, I think Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, for his summation of the current period and how brilliant it is. And the African People's Socialist Party formed the African People's Solidarity Committee, which I have the honor of being the chair of. It formed this organization 44 years ago, in 1976, to put white people under the leadership of the African Revolution, which is something that turns history right side up. And it's very, very powerful, because we are sent into the belly of the beast, behind enemy lines, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela calls it, to take on the white society, to win other people just like ourselves, to recognize that we sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African people, on the assault on Africa, on the stolen labor of African people for 600 years, on the fact that African people were turned into commodities for sale, just like gold, just like coltan, just like everything else that Europeans steal from the continent of Africa, that Africans were the original commodities worth more than anything else. And it was the stolen labor of African people and their sale as human commodities, their trafficking to the Americas, to the Western Hemisphere, that created the products, the cotton, the tobacco, the indigo, all of the things that created the Industrial Revolution and brought about wealth to white people in Europe, that created the capitalist system itself. And that's why this question of colonialism is the most important critical question of our time. Until the question of colonialism is dealt with, until it is actually as a system overturned by the leadership of the African working class, it will never stop. It will never go away. And when you see the resistance of African people that we are seeing in the response right now to the brutal murder of George Floyd, this incredible resistance, we see the question of the enslavement of African people as the basis for this capitalist parasitic system, for the basis for the wealth of America and all the colonizer population, which is us, boiling up from under the ground because it cannot be stifled. And that's why the struggle has been during this time to take on the colonial question, because we can see that all of the monuments to colonialism are being forced to be taken down, that the ruling class, the Wall Street, the 1%, they're forced to take down and get rid of the evidence, and this is a demand by the leadership of the African working class. It's really, really powerful. And we have to look at this because every contradiction stems from this. And I want to say also that I salute Deputy Chair Ona Zanea-Shatella, under whose leadership so many of us, well, actually, the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement work every day in our day-to-day work around the question of reparations, raising the reparations. So it's an incredible honor to work under her leadership and her office, and to say that I am proud to be able to have the honor to be in the African People's Solidarity Committee and our mass organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, under the leadership of the party whose pictures, the leadership, the Central Committee, their pictures are in every single issue of the Burning Spear newspaper. It's not a secret. It's not something, if you look at some white left organizations, I don't even know who is even in them. I don't know who leads them. The African People's Socialist Party is out there. There are pictures in the newspaper, but also they're out there in the community every day. And they are real people, real women and men, the African nation who are fighting for nothing else but the liberation of African people and the liberation of all oppressed and colonized peoples, and an end to this vicious system that we live under. And it is really critical that in this time in history, that we as white people say that we will go beyond protest, that we will take on our mandate to go back into the white population, to peel away, to struggle to shake all of our cousins and our family and everybody else, to jump off that pedestal, to turn loose our whiteness, and to stand in genuine solidarity with the African liberation that's going to take everybody with it if we're prepared to go there. But we have to do our part. We can't do anything we want. We can't set the terms for it. We have to take up the mandate to go beyond protest. We have to be organized. If you're here tonight, I want you to hear this call. We must be organized. This is not about an idea that you can sit in a cafe and have your latte or get it to go because now maybe we can't go there, you know, and talk about, oh, this is so interesting, African internationalism that Director Akile talked about, the political theory of the African Revolution that lets us begin to see the world as it is experienced by African workers and the oppressed and colonized on the planet Earth, that it breaks through our self-described narrative, our narrative as the subjects of history, the ones who determine what it is that everybody else in the world is supposed to think, is supposed to do, that keeps them out of a process of production and reproduction for their own needs and their own communities and peoples and nations, but everything that they produce comes to us. And that we live in a system that is dialectical in that everything that we experience as white people requires, as the chairman says, drone strikes in Syria and Pakistan and the police murders of African people and this incredible prison population that we see today. And this is why we are taking on Wall Street. This is why we're taking on the ruling class. And I want to say something about it, that Wall Street, that Bank of America, the 1%, all of the ruling class has to pay reparations to African people, and not in some kind of way that they determine, that they need to pay reparations to this incredible program called the Black Power Blueprint, that is about political and economic power in the hands of the African working class, building an economy of self-determination, a liberated African economy that negates the parasitic, blood-sucking economy built on the suffering of everybody else on this planet. And this is an incredible, incredible period, an incredible movement to join and be part of, to go against everything that we ever thought about ourselves and about everything else in the world. Just turn that off and let's hear the narrative of the African working class. Let's hear the narrative of the oppressed and colonized here inside the borders of the United States and around the world. Just today, the US Congress went on their vacation. They closed down as they always do. They went on their vacation, which who knows when they'll be back. But in any case, and they are the 1%. They are the ruling class. They're a hand in hand with Wall Street and the banks. They have given Wall Street trillions of dollars. I mean, up into 13, 14 trillion dollars the US Congress and US presidents have given to Wall Street over the last 10 years and more. And that's just in this period. Well, today they shut down Congress, and it is the same day that the $600 for 30 million unemployed people inside the United States ends. It is over today. Nothing was granted for there to be a continuation of that or anything else. And that the 30 million people, the unemployed, the people who are even lucky enough to get unemployment, and many Africans can't, are without anything now. And the $600 expires. Also, what expired today or in the last few days is a US moratorium on evictions in federally subsidized housing. So this is going to affect 12.5 million people. And you can read, if you Google it, you can read articles in newspapers all over the country that they are expecting a tidal wave of evictions. And this is affecting this economic crisis that the US is facing due to the resistance of African people inside this country and around the world, which forces US imperialism to expose itself as a colonizer, as a parasite, as a war machine, based on stealing the resources, the labor, and the self-determination of human beings. That 12.5 million people could be, involved or could be evicted based on this moratorium ending, and this Congress left without dealing with that. And what we're seeing in this particular period, just in the last few weeks, a report that 40% of African families in the United States, 40% say they do not have enough food. They do not have enough food for their children, for their families, and 74% of African families say that they can't be sure that they're even going to be able to pay their rent. So we're talking about 74%, 3/4 of African people right now saying that they can't pay their rent. And we're talking about a situation in which African people do not have social wealth, in which the colonial reality is there. And Comrade Jesse was talking about a movement that exists prior to this one, Make Wall Street Pay Reparations, to the Black Power Blueprint. This is under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, but about 10 years ago was a movement of white people called Occupy Wall Street. And this was a white nationalist movement. They didn't even mention colonialism. Their demands were about they, as white people, were oppressed by Wall Street. It was talking about student loans and whatever else, the inequity of white society, as opposed to getting down to the question that Wall Street was built on the bodies and stolen labor of African people, and literally so, because under Wall Street is a graveyard, is a cemetery of 20,000 African bodies. I don't know if you know that. If you don't live in New York, you might not know that, but in New York, the African community has forced the city to turn that into a monument, and there is some kind of monument there that you can go to. But before, it was just all the buildings of Wall Street sitting on the bodies of enslaved African people, 20,000 in New York City alone. And so we're talking about the ultimate question is colonialism, not racism, not the ideas in white people's heads. That's not what killed George Floyd. That's not what imprisons 2.3 million people in the United States, the majority, 3/4 of whom are African, Mexican, or indigenous or more. And that this country has more people in prison than China does. In fact, it has 1 million more people in prison than China does. And China has 1 billion people of their population. So we live in a city where in a country where the gulag is, where the rounding up of African people is happening. But when we have white people protesting our rights, we don't talk about the fact that what happened in Portland that some white people experience happens in the African community every single day. It is a community under siege. That's what it means to be in colonialism, under colonialism. It means occupation. It means being occupied by a colonial police force where SWAT teams can come break down your doors any day that they want to, where they can kill you with impunity. They just ruled today that Darren Wilson is not going to even face trial or charges for the murder of Mike Brown in Ferguson in 2014. They just said that today in the middle of all this. Well, that's how it is. That's colonialism. That's colonialism. They can do what they want to do. And it's in a system in which we are the colonizers. So therefore, we have the power of life and death over African people. That I wanted to say that this power of life and death over African people means that we unite with our ruling class. We unite with our ruling class. So, I've read many books about lynchings, the terror, which is a ridiculous and really horrible name for what it were mobs of torture, murder, rape, just undescribable atrocities and violence towards African people that white people not only committed, but never paid a price for, and also celebrated. So bands were playing. You can read a really powerful book called 100 Years of Lynching that is just the newspaper accounts of these things that were called lynchings, these white terror mobs of lynchers, of white people who murdered Africans, but they had bands playing, they danced, they sold, organs of the African people that they were murdering and torturing. They burnt them while they were still alive. And we weren't asked to do that by our ruling class. We did that. We did that voluntarily, our ancestors. And today's world is the same, only, the state does it, and we support that. And that, we have to take responsibility for that and for what it means to be the colonizers, because if there is colonialism in this country, then we are the colonizers. The Africans, the indigenous, are the colonized, and we know there's 2 Americas. We know this violence that we have perpetrated. And, we say that we owe reparations because every dream and aspiration that we have comes at the expense of African people. But the African People's Socialist Party is calling for us to go further than that we have to take the struggle to our own ruling class. And I think that it's really, really important that we do that. I totally unite with that. That's what we should have been doing when, if we were poor white workers, then we would have been lynching our bosses, not Africans. This is what we did. And that we have a responsibility now to do what we should have been doing for the last 200 or 300 years. We have to take this to the ruling class that we helped get to where they are in every possible way of stealing this land, enforcing the enslavement of African people, enforcing the convict leasing, and every single way, burning down towns when African people just said, hell, we're gonna go live by ourselves, we'll create our own economy, and they did. And once they were prosperous and self-determining, mobs of white people like in Tulsa or Rosewood, Florida, came in, burned it down, murdered people to steal the wealth again. We have done it all. We have been the shock troops of the white ruling class. We have done it for them. We got them to where they are because we also totally united with it and aspire to be that. And every time we take on a struggle as white women, LGBTQ, or anything else, white people end up saying, give me a greater share of the stolen loot. I want to be on the table with you. So we end up not fighting against colonialism, we end up fighting to be LGBT police, colonial police that can gun down African people, or LGBT in the Marines to murder oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. And so we're saying, and the African People's Socialist Party is saying, no, that the African People's Socialist Party is against all forms of oppression, is for the liberation of all oppressed and colonized peoples, is going to end a system where there's war and violence and rape and plunder, and is going to liberate this planet, solve the problems that imperialism has left the peoples of the planet with, and create a system based on reparations, based on the redistribution of the wealth of the world. Imperialism is going to go. And we are demanding a step in that. A step towards that is the demand that Wall Street, our own ruling class, that we stand against it, not because of something we think that they did to us, but because they are built on and carry out the oppression, the colonial domination, and the violence against African people inside the borders of the United States and oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. So we are going to rectify our stance in the past. We're going to take a true stand as revolutionaries, as we commit national suicide, and we join in solidarity with the African Revolution under the leadership of the African working class, and fight for a new world in which all human beings can live, no one at the expense of anyone else, and demand that our ruling class pay reparations to the Black Power blueprint, Uhuru, and unity through reparations.
Uhuru Cheryl Petty, thank you for that brilliant presentation, and just laying out the history of colonialism and white people's role as the colonizer in this situation, in this system. And I just really want to salute you and appreciate you for that incredibly powerful presentation that you just gave. And now I want to, so before we get started, I just want to let people know that we will be doing Q&A. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and write it in the Q&A section. And if that doesn't work for you, you can also email info@uhurusolidarity.org. And yeah, so now I'm actually going to talk to you a little bit more about membership and why you should become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity movement and contribute to the work of the Black Power Blueprint today. So next slide. All right, so, being a part of dismantling colonialism today, we just talked about the whole history, and it's so clear that this is not a fight against racism. This is a struggle against colonialism. And we want you to be a part of that struggle against colonialism. And you can do that through becoming a member of the Uhuru Solidarity movement. So we need need to be, becoming a member of USM makes that one more person that this system, then one more white person that this system can't count on, and one more person that Wall Street can't count on. And so by becoming a member of USM, the reparations that we pay is part of dismantling the colonial system that was just talked about in all three of these incredible presentations. Next slide. And yeah, so I want to encourage all of you to join. Next slide. And one critical thing that we talked about and was significant is, you know, a key theme throughout this entire meeting is that we have to go beyond protest. We have to go beyond protest. We have to go beyond just talking, and we can't be cafe revolutionaries. And, you know, we can't be satisfied with that. We can't be satisfied with the results that gives us. We can't be satisfied that, you know, we go out there and we march in the streets and we come home and we get to continue to sit and go on with our lives as ordinary, regular white people. But we have to go beyond protest. And next slide. And it's not just going beyond protest, but it's specifically going beyond protest and getting organized under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, under the leadership of the vanguard party of the African Revolution that is putting power back into the hands of the African working class. And I'm about to show you what that looks like and solutions to what we're seeing today. We see the system crumbling. We see it not being able to provide healthcare for people. Chairwoman Penny just talked about how 75% of Africans can't even, you know, can't even pay their rent, or might not be able to pay their rent. And that's a serious contradiction. And, you know, that is colonialism right there. And so getting organized under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party means going and organizing other white people to pay reparations, and also, you know, reparations that are actually repairing the damage and are being put towards projects that's putting power back into the hands of the African working class. So next slide. And so when you join USM, joining USM is an act of reparations. The fundamental basis of our membership in USM is paying reparations. And we recognize that all white people, you know, owe reparations. And that's the basis of our membership. So, you know, just by being a member, we encourage you to do the work and to get involved. But by being a member, this is a part of participating in the independent African economy that the African People's Socialist Party is creating. Next slide. And so this project that I'm about to show you, we have been talking about it, reparations to the Black Power Blueprint, make Wall Street pay reparations. This project that I'm about to talk to you was created after the murder of Mike Brown in St. Louis in Ferguson in 2014. And what came out of this, what came out of the murder of Mike Brown, what came out of the uprisings that happened in Ferguson, you know, just like the uprisings that are happening in Minneapolis, just like the uprisings that are happening all around the world, what came out of this is the Black Power Blueprint, one of the most incredible projects. So now I would like to show you all a video of what this project is and what this means to the African community. Uhuru.
The Black Power Blueprint means to me a way that the Black people can have an actual voice and what is going on in their community. It's the way that we can come together and feel proud about what is happening in our community. And the Black Power Blueprint is the way that I believe is going to unite the community as a community that works together for one cause. The black people, the black population coming in power with one voice, being able to take back those things and to add on to our lives a better life and a better way.
The Black Power Blueprint, I think, points to giving small businesses or individuals that are of African descent a chance to grow and to empower themselves economically.
Seems like, you know, quote unquote, people that didn't want to be in the city, now they want the city, you know, and so that's pushing us back as a people. And but now, you know, things that were desolate, buildings that were vacant, you know, that you all are buying now and trying to make sure that, you know, something's given back to the city and make the people feel like that they may have something to reach out to in their community. So I think it's very important, you know, that what you all are doing is to give back to the community and helping those that probably wouldn't venture outside of their community to get help. But now they can come right there and get the help that they need. I mean, as far as I understand you all open up a market soon, you know, where you all be selling, you know, fresh vegetables. And it's so important that, you know, even that we begin to eat more healthier, you know, and eat right, and things that some people in the community don't have cars. They can't get everywhere. You know, when I was coming up, we had little grocery stores in the community. We had fruit stands, vegetable stands that was in the community. And those things are almost, you know, they're gone now. But to put it back in, I think it's really awesome.
A flyer going around and a Facebook event going around about this Martin Luther King's Day event that was at the Uhuru house. And I had been hearing about it, the house, but I had never had time because I'm always at work and doing these things. So when I seen that, I was like, okay, I'm off today because I got that holiday off. And so I went to the Uhuru house for that day, for Martin Luther King's Day. And the chairman was speaking that day, and the energy that was there, and the what they was focusing on, and just the information, just like it got me locked and loaded right then, and just the movement and what they was doing with the community and where they were located at. That really touched me. So that's how I became acquainted with the Uhuru house. So it definitely takes our community to be able to make effective change in our community. So what they're focusing on is like building not only political power, but economical power. And that in itself is a movement right there. So just having some people that has knowledge about our history, where we've been and where we could possibly go, like that's powerful. And the fact that they buy it up the block, they're showing people in the neighborhood that you can have more, right?
The Black Power Blueprint to me is very vital. It's very important, mostly because I'm aware of it, and I'm awake to the principles that the Black Power Blueprint stand for. To me, it stands for the economic development and empowerment of Black people, and giving us our independence and freedom through those economics and resources that have been starved of our communities for centuries.
It means Black people coming together, and we really need that because we're so ununited at this point, and we really need to unite because all we have is each other at this point. So, yeah.
Uhuru. So yeah, I just really appreciate that dynamic video and hearing the statements from members of the community and what the Black Power Blueprint means to them. And I just want to show you a couple of photos of what's going on in the north side of St. Louis. You know, community garden. And the red, black, and green flag, the 25-foot red, black, and green flag, that is the African community beeps their horns, puts up their fists, and it's just a huge sense of pride in the community as one African nation. And what the community garden means, people come in and participate and be able to grow food, you know, and be the community. So next slide. This is Mr. Gary Brooks. This is the garden is named the Gary Brooks Community Garden. And he has been working hard to produce the incredible vegetables that are in the garden and making it happen. Next slide. This is a video of a work day that they had, comrades out there volunteering, bringing it all together. And then next slide. And this is a video of the stage, the amazing event space and stage that was also put up this spring. And it's also going to be home to the One Africa, One Nation marketplace. So this project is what you get to be a part of when you donate, when you become a member, when you join. As you can see, this isn't just, you know, this isn't just some regular garden, some regular event space, some regular community center. These are projects that are putting power into the hands of the African working class. And that's what, you know, we need to understand. And that's why we need to go into the white community and raise these resources to give African people the ability to be self-determining people. And, you know, I just really want to encourage all of you to go ahead, and if you go to the next slide. So go ahead and contribute. You can do that by going to our website, uhurusolidarity.org, and you can click become a member. And that's how you can become a member. And I would encourage people to become a sustaining member to sustain the work of the Uhuru Solidarity movement. And if you are already a member, you can go ahead and contribute and click the red button that says pay reparations and be a part of this international revolutionary movement that is changing the world. And if you can't go online, the next slide, you can go ahead and you can send a check or cash to the P.O. Box 3630 St. Petersburg, Florida 33713. And if you have any issues in terms of getting that in, you can always email us at info@uhurusolidarity.org. So I want to encourage you to join, encourage you to participate in these incredible revolutionary projects. And now I want to turn it over to our chair, Jesse Neville, to facilitate the question and answer for Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Ali. And I just want to appreciate both of those incredible presentations that were made earlier by Chairwoman Penny Hudson, Director Akile Anai. And I want to shout out everybody who's participating in this Zoom meeting, as well as everybody watching on Facebook and YouTube. And people were just going crazy for those presentations, just really uniting and showing a lot of enthusiasm for the message that was being put out. So I just really want to appreciate that, as well as the call for membership from Ali. And before I take questions here, and I will be relaying the questions to our two keynote speakers, I actually want to show you a couple of more slides. And I am self-critical because I was so excited to hear Director Akile and Chairwoman Penny that I forgot something very important that I need to tell you about, which is what the Make Wall Street Pay Reparations campaign is actually doing. Okay, so this is going to take me 1 minute. I just wanted to shout out everybody in all of the cities throughout the US that have been involved in weekly actions. We are holding weekly actions in front of Bank of America locations throughout the country, including tomorrow. We will be in Somerville, in St. Petersburg, Florida, in Somerville, Massachusetts, in St. Louis, Missouri, in Portland, Oregon, and in New York, and many other places as well. So you can join us and start planning weekly actions by contacting us and joining the campaign. I'm going to tell you how to do that in just a second. We also have a media team led by a very powerful comrade named Danny, who lives in Portland. And this media team is responsible for getting this campaign out in the world. So we need people to help write press releases, research the media, get the word out, hold press conferences, do everything we can to blast this campaign out in the world. We have already seen some big, bourgeois media coverage, including in the Tampa Bay Times and Business Insider. And on September 18th, right in the belly of the beast, right there in New York at Wall Street, we will be holding a massive mobilization to shut down Wall Street and demand that they pay reparations to African people. So if you want to participate in building all of these things and get organized under the leadership of the African working class, you can go to uhurusolidarity.org/volunteer and sign up, or you can email us at info@uhurusolidarity.org. So that's what I wanted to say, and I just would have been a loss for me to forget to tell you how you can actually be involved in this campaign. So just wanted to take a minute to say that, and now we would like to take any questions, and actually we do have some questions. We have a question from Samuel Fouth, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Samuel says, are there any gardening or construction projects near or in San Diego to which I could contribute? I have some experience with both. And just wanted to see if any of our speakers, Director Akile or Chairwoman Penny, if either of you wants to respond.
Uhuru, well, in terms of what's located in San Diego, and you have to forgive me because I'm not the best at geography when it comes to the U.S. And then I know places in California are really spread out. But in Oakland, we have, a few of our economic institutions, Uhuru Foods and Pies, Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles, and the Uhuru House in Oakland, California. And then we also have political organization. The party and the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement is present in San Diego. Currently no gardening projects or construction happening, but that happens with the building and the development of the political work on the ground in San Diego and in Oakland. In terms of being able to contribute, because I imagine you're saying to contribute the skills that you have to projects like that. And of course, joining organization is a part of the process of establishing, utilizing your skills and establishing those types of projects. But we are in San Diego and various places throughout California. And I'm sure somebody on the West Coast is on this meeting right now who's going to be able to take your contact information and get with you. And I just wanted to also say that we do have garden projects throughout our movement. And most of the gardening work usually is led by the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, which is, you can visit developmentforafrica.org to see more of those types of projects. I know that we have in Huntsville, Alabama, and in Houston, Texas, as well. And of course, supporting the Black Power Blueprint and the garden project that's happening there. So, in St. Louis. But yeah, join organization and let's put those skills that you've got to work right where you are in San Diego. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Director Akile. So we also have, these are just some comments. We have a comment from Jane Christensen saying, I follow this movement on Facebook. I am white and I abhor the racism. And I appreciate you, Jane, for participating. And I just want to encourage you to become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, if you haven't already, by going to uhurusolidarity.org/join. And I'm going to read these other comments and then open it up to our speakers to see if you want to respond to any or all of these. So we have a comment from Alana Woods in Seattle. This wasn't a question, but rather a topical piece of information. Europe's stock market was invented to trade stocks for the Dutch East India Company. Selling enslaved Africans and the spoils of colonialism is literally the origin of all white stock markets. Very true. I don't know if there's anything we want to say about that, but that is absolutely true. Chairwoman Penny.
Uhuru, yes, I appreciate that because yes, that is very true. And the Dutch stock market was the first stock market in the world where they basically called on people to make an investment that would be like your 401k now into that stock market to fund the trips of the slave ships to Africa and also colonialism in other parts of the world. But it was built on, definitely, it was built on the enslavement of African people and put this incredible burst of wealth into Holland, which then had the Renaissance, quote unquote, and all of this art and everything, all of which was stolen from African people. And also just the ability to have the leisure to do that was stolen from the oppressed and colonized peoples. And then of course, the stock market of London is called City of London. It's an area called City of London. It's by Canary Wharf, which is where the slave ships, the ships full of enslaved African people, came up the Thames and disembarked right there, where there is a museum now, which you probably know if you're talking about this, which was a warehouse where African people were kept. And this is right in the middle of the financial district of Britain's Wall Street, the city or the City of London. And of course, the same is true for New York City, because Wall Street became a financial center because there was a cafe where they held, back then, I'm talking about in the 1700s, where they were drinking lattes and everything. The original Starbucks was Wall Street. And at this cafe, which was called Tontine's, which was on the corner of Wall and Water Street, they could see the ships come in. And when the ships came in, the captains came into this tontine and registered there as how many African people they had for sale. And the market where Africans were sold was just down the street from that on Wall Street. So this became the center, and the fact, as I mentioned before, that the entire, that 20,000 bodies of African people are literally buried under Wall Street because, Africans were forced to live in that area, enslaved Africans. So yes, I mean, literally Wall Street, I mean, you can go on and on. There's so much more to say about it, from the relationship of New York and Wall Street to the cotton that was sold. That was the basis of Lehman Brothers and so many other, just this whole sense of, and the fact that African human beings were collateral for the banks. So if you owned African, if you were a white person who owned African human beings, that would be your most valuable property that the banks would then basically put a lien on so that to give you a loan. And you would then buy more property and buy more African people, which was property, and and just on and on and on. In fact, the relationship of New York City to the South was New York wanted to be on the side of the Confederacy. That's why there was a huge riot of white workers, Irish workers, and by the way, Irish workers who were colonized in Ireland, that came to the United States to walk up on the backs of African people, not to stand with them. And when they found out that they were going to have to fight on the side of the United States and not on the side of the Confederacy, they went on a white mob riot, and burned down African orphanages and killed African people, and just, went on a rampage of this. So it's just like really deep. It's really deep. And in fact, it's often said that the trade in African people was a triangular trade, because it went to, say, starting in Africa, stealing African human beings, bringing them to the Caribbean and to the southern United States, and then taking all of the goods, all of the products that African people were forced to harvest and plant and cultivate, to England to be processed, where the cotton mills were, and all of this, and sugar was processed and all this kind of thing. But one historian says it should have been a quadrilennial, because it was Africa, the southern of the Caribbean, and the southern states where Africans were, and New York and New England was totally into it. So it was all one thing, and London, and Bristol and Liverpool and all of that in Europe. And so it was one scene, it was one thing. And what the US was fighting for was control over, the wealth produced by African people. And, it's one system, we're all part of it. And yes, the Wall Street rests on the backs of African people and the blood and suffering of African humanity and oppressed and colonized people.
Uhuru. Thank you for that. That was very informative and just helped to really deepen our understanding of this. So thank you, Chairwoman Penny. And I know that people are moved to take action. And I want to appreciate Samuel, who wrote in here, thank you, joining now, but I'm still listening. Uhuru. So that's great. We welcome you.
Right. Yes, fantastic.
That's really awesome, Samuel, and everybody else who decided to contribute and join this organization tonight. We really salute you and welcome you. And we have one more comment here, and then I think that's all we've gotten in so far. So I will turn it back over to Allie. But the last comment I wanted to read was from Kristen Forthen, who says, at the party's 7th Congress and at the party's last plenary, the party was addressing a banking institution under the party's economic umbrella. That was so incredible to hear about. Uhuru. All right. So thank you, everybody, for your questions, and just want to turn it back over to our MC.
Uhuru. Well, this has been a phenomenal event, and I really appreciate everyone who was participating and watching in this event, for you all being here. And I want to make some announcements that we have. I just want to also shout out some incredible, generous donors that we have. We have Jackson Hollingsworth, who contributed $10. Johan Bedingfield contributed $25. Carvin Anderson contributed $40. Jesse Call contributed $50. Mads Ambrose contributed $50. Secretary General of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Allison Haney, contributed $25. And our viewing party in Boston raised $20. And of course, I want to give a huge shout out to our new member in what sounds like San Diego, Samuel Plow, for joining tonight. It's incredible. I'm really excited to have you as part of this organization and as part of this movement. And I encourage everyone here to be like Samuel and to go ahead and to join the Uhuru Solidarity movement. And I just want to make some quick announcements that we have our weekly demonstrations that are going to be happening, that Jesse talked about, every week in cities around the country. So if you want to be a part of that, email us at info@uhurusolidarity.org. And I just want to make, and then we also have an event hosted by our comrade in the Southern region, Jackson Hollingsworth, called J.K. Rowling Owes Reparations to African People, an anti-colonial fundraiser and Harry Potter trivia night. And that is going to be tomorrow evening, August 1st at 8:00 p.m. Eastern. On August 8th, we have a study hosted by the African People's Solidarity Committee at 4 p.m. Eastern called It's Every Jew's Responsibility to Oppose the Colonial Settler State of Israel, a study on Zionism, colonialism and solidarity with Palestinian and African liberation. And this study will be presented by APSC member and chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville. And you can register at tinyurl.com/victory to Palestine. And the African People's Socialist Party is holding a webinar, Marcus Garvey Lives, celebration and analysis of the life of Marcus Garvey and his UNIA organization, which is going to be Monday, August 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And so definitely encourage people to tune into those. And before we close out, I just want to see if there are any final comments from our speakers tonight. Uhuru.
Uhuru, well, just briefly, I think that this has been a very incredible event. Just very important information that was, laid out, things that we discussed, and that we talked a lot about how we have to go beyond protest, but we also have to go beyond discussion, and that we can't just be information consumers, which is something that we heard today, but we have to, African internationalism, the significance of this revolutionary theory outside of the fact that it is defined as the worldview of the African working class, that it's a theory of practice, and that in order to carry out what it is that we need to do in order to defeat this social system, it requires us to go beyond just the studying of it, to take all this information in about the social system, which we should always be engaged in a process of learning and really deepening our understanding of the system and how we go towards destroying it. But we the part of it is joining organization, joining the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, if you are European, North American in the world, and if you're an African and you're watching this and you're participating in this process, join the African People's Socialist Party at apsp.uhuru.org, and we have a revolution to win. So let's let this struggle mobilize us to join organization, and this is the best one to join. So Uhuru.
Uhuru, I just really want to salute this event and Director Akile for that brilliant presentation and for the fight for the African People's Socialist Party, for the understanding of the vanguard, the African Revolution, and why it must be led by the African working class, and just put it out so brilliantly and passionately, and how this is the only way, that this is what takes us beyond discussion. And we have to go beyond discussion. We have to go beyond we have to go beyond also the question of racism, because as Chairman Omali Shatella says, racism is the ideological underpinning of the colonial system. And it's an ideology, but you can't take on the symptom, you can't take on the underpinning without dealing with the system that is based on it and that carries out colonialism, whether we, quote, unlearn our racism or not. And of course we can't, because we still live on this pedestal of the oppression of African people on stolen land of the indigenous people. And, the thing is that they talk about unlearning racism, but we have to learn what colonialism is. We have to learn it, and we have to take responsibility for it. We have to understand it, that there is a state. There is a state power, and the state in this country is a colonial state. And it is there. It's not going to be reformed. It's not going to be dismantled, not while the system is on, because murdering African people is what it's supposed to do. It's what it's created to do. And it's going to continue to carry that out, whether they now say social workers are going to do it. Well, all the social workers are going to be sent to the white community. They're still going to be sending the militarized police forces and SWAT teams to the African community. They're still going to be pumping drugs into the African community to create a drug economy. They're not going to give economic and political power to African people. They're still going to be sending them massively to the prison. That's what the state is there to do. And it creates economic wealth today, just as the enslavement of African people did 150 years ago. So, this is why we have to be organized. We have to take it on materially. We have to answer the call of the African Revolution that is about the future, that is very serious, and planning every possible way to take down imperialism and liberate Africa and all their stolen wealth and the right for African people to produce for themselves, for their own benefit. So I just really want to salute the African People's Socialist Party. I salute Director Akile as one of the brilliant examples of the many incredible African women and men who are leaders of the party under the leadership of Chairman Omali Shatella, who created African internationalism. And of course, we're white, but we can embrace African internationalism. And it's very liberating. It's incredible to, wow, I'm brilliant now because I understand this as African, as the chairman has laid it out. And it lets us see the world as it really is, not as we want it to be. So join and, you know, just come on board. This is an amazing, amazing period and movement that put you in contact in a principled way with African people and the rest of the planet Earth. So I just want to say Uhuru and thank you all again. Salute Comrade Chair Jesse Neville, Ali Ayello, and everybody who came out tonight. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny. Well, I just really want to appreciate our amazing speakers this evening, Director Akile Anai, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and Chair Jesse Neville. And just want to say, you know, this is the organization for you. If you united with what you heard tonight, go to uhurusolidarity.org/join and be a part of organization. And that will be the end of our program. And I'll end with our amazing chant and slogan, unity through reparations.
Reparations.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.